Welcome to the Even Better podcast, where your host, Sinikka Waugh of Your Clear Next Step, brings you exciting content about making communities better by helping people get even better at work.
Today's episode is brought to you by Your Clear Next Step in the Changemaker Certification Program.
Would you like to save time by solving the right problem sooner with a realistic and measurable plan? Reduce overwhelm by finding more sustainably productive ways to work? Improve employee morale by creating more positive workdays from within? Stay competitive by tightening your turn or increasing your agility in adapting to changing customer demands? If you said yes to those things, then we have the solution for you.
Interested in becoming a changemaker? Give us a call at 515-442-0545.
Hello, everyone. Thanks so much for joining us. This is your host, Sinikka Waugh. I am so delighted that you are back for another edition of the Even Better podcast. This is part of our ongoing mission here at Your Clear Next Step to help us all have better workdays so that together we can co-create even better communities. I shared a couple of episodes ago that this was part of a series, a little mini series. It just had 2 episodes in the series, and it's about change. And I know you don't want to talk about change, but bear with me for a second. So, a 2-part series. One of them was an episode on change you didn't want. What happens if the change is something you did not want? That episode, if you missed that one, go back and go find that one. Change you did not want. This one is talking about what if there's a change on your horizon and it's your option? It's a change that you could make, but you're not sure if you should do this or not. There's a potential change. So sometimes change happens to us and we're a little bit out of control. It's out of our control. Someone else is making that change for us. Someone else is deciding for us that change is going to happen. Sometimes change feels a little bit scarier the further away from our control it is, right? So if I'm making the decision, if it's mine, I feel like I have control. But if it's if an organization making that change for me, or if it's an environmental decision or a global decision that's being made without my control, it feels a little bit scarier. And so that last episode was about the changes that have happened to me or kind of at me, and I don't know if I wanted it. What do I do then? This one, I want to look at, we've got a potential change that we could make, and I'm trying to decide if I should do this or not. Should I make this change? Should I not make this change? So it's a little bit about change, a little bit about decision making. And I just want to offer a couple of tips on this one. You tell me. So I'd love to hear your feedback on this one. Once you listen to this, chime in on our social media platform, give us a share, give us a like, give us a follow, chime in, get in on the conversation on this one. I would love to hear your feedback and other tips that you would share, other tips that you would chime in on this, because I think this is so important for us to have tools, have resources to help us decide whether or not we should make changes. So the first one and the first step on both of these is similar, and that is recommending the power of the pause. So I love this phrase, the power of the pause. Man, we are moving so fast in our lives, so stinking fast. I don't know about you, but I was so surprised to look at the calendar the other day and go, "Oh my goodness gracious! Do you know how late in the year it is?" As I'm recording this, it's the mid to late August, right? And I turned to a friend and said something like, "Well, Merry Christmas," right? Because it just goes so fast. The year is going so fast. So the idea of the power of the pause is to not let the hurry and scurry and busy just take the tyranny of the urgent. And instead, when we are facing a significant change and trying to decide if we should do something, to pause for a minute, to just take a deep breath and pause and sit with this change and think about it and reflect on it. And if you're a pros and cons person, do your pros and cons list. If you're a list maker, make your list. If you're a journaler, journal. If you are if you're a meditator, meditate. If you're a prayer, then pray. If you are whatever it is that you do to slow down, to stop, to reflect, to think, to consider, to stop doing and be for a hot minute. And spend time in the moment with what you think and what you feel and what you are experiencing. Be mindful of your sensations about this particular change. Be mindful of what you are what you are feeling? What's it making your heart do? What's it making your blood do? What's it making your like your sensations do? What are you feeling about this? When you think about it, are you getting more or less agitated? Are you getting more or less at peace? Are you getting more or less irritated? What does this change? If you think you move forward with this change, what does that do to your mindset? Really spend time reflecting on it so that you understand where you're coming from. The second one I'm going to invite us to do is define the terms. So, step one is the power of the pause. Just sit with it for a minute. Second one is define the terms. So often we go rushing into something and we're like, oh, I'm going to do this, but we don't really know what this is. What does this actually mean? And I have a fairly recent example in the life of someone very close to me where they were making a decision with partial information and they thought they were going to make a change. And the change that they thought they were making was very different from the change they were actually making. So we want to make sure we define the terms. And this was a pretty big life decision, and it involved relocating to a place that was wildly different from where they currently lived. But they only had partial information, and they didn't have all the information that would include salary information and terms of employment and housing. And once they started to get all of that data, man, the stay versus go decision, it started to look really, really different. So let's define those terms. What is A and what is B? When I think about change in all the change models that I teach, A is what is today and where we are currently, and B is where we're going. And so when you're defining those terms between what is A and what is B, A is where we are today, and B is the future, right? B is the future state. A is current state, B is future state. So what is today and where is it that I'm going? So as we define those terms, we really want to look at putting boundaries around it. So as we look at B, what is that? And we want to put some not inflated, artificial, imaginary, artificially inspired, overinflated or overly negative or overly positive terms, but really concrete, specific terms. What is A? What is it really today? Brass tacks. And what is B? So I know what would I be gaining here, or what would I be losing? So you can really talk about it in concrete terms. So let's define it. A third step, which I think is so important for this, is to unpack, what do I value? And what are my values? So once I start looking at what are these things, what is A and what is B, maybe B is bigger. Maybe B has more space. Maybe it has more room to play. Maybe we're talking about space, living spaces right now. Maybe B is bigger, and B has more room to play, and B has more windows. Great. But maybe B is more expensive. Okay, so I've specified it. Then when I look at what I value and what are my values, maybe I do appreciate light and maybe I do appreciate space, but my core value is around financial stewardship. Well, if financial stewardship is a core value, then but windows, big windows, aren't a core value. Then I need to evaluate these decisions based on not just what looks shiny and pretty, but what I value and what I say I value. So when I'm making changes, I'm not just looking at what looks attractive, what looks shiny, what seems interesting in the moment. I'm not making a split second decision, but I'm really anchoring it in what I value, what's important to me, what I say I value, what I prioritize, what is in alignment with my core values. And if you've never spent time doing one of those, what are your values exercise? What are your priorities? What are your personal goals exercises? I invite you to spend time doing one of those, because it really helps you make alignment when you're doing significant changes, even little changes. It helps you just keep alignment with your values. So power of the pause is first defining the terms. So you've got really clear specificity on what is A and what is B. This is helping you decide whether you're making a change. Third is, what do I value and what are my values? So you can make sure you're making decisions that are in alignment with your values. Then the fourth one, and this is so important for change, specifically for change. Once I've made this decision Those first three might align with any other decision-making paradigm or any other decision-making model. This fourth one is unique to kind of a change management model. Once I've made this decision to change, then I need to plan ahead for the journey. If I've decided that I am going to do this, so especially this is important. So at the beginning of the session, I was talking about aligning to that other session. I'm not sure if I wanted this. This is a decision-making change. Do I want this? So if there's any risk that I might not want this, then for step 4, once I've made a decision, then I need to plan ahead for the journey. How am I going to help myself through this transition? How am I going to help myself through this journey? Because the journey of change is fairly predictable. There's going to be a moment where I grieve letting go of what I once had. There's going to be a moment where I feel a bit unmoored and uncertain and unstable. There's going to be a moment where I climb up to the other side and I sweat my way through and I have some backsliding and I have some setbacks and I grind my way through to the top and I finally arrive at my destination. This journey is fairly repeatable. It's fairly predictable. And so once I make a decision to go to this change or to embrace this change, I need to make a plan for how I'm going to help myself along this journey. How will I soothe my feelings of grief? How will I stabilize myself in that unstable, uncertain period? How will I cheer myself on when I'm sweating through the climb? How will I re-energize when I backslide a little bit? How will I hold myself accountable as I continue to move forward through the top? What am I going to do to celebrate that I made it after this really tough climb? Especially if I'm sitting here looking at a moment that says, I'm not sure if I want to do this. Especially if I'm looking at a change in front of me and saying, I don't know. I don't know if I really want this or not. Then it will be critical that I take the time to say, if I've laid out the options and I paused and I really defined those terms and I really looked at what I valued and I've said to myself, yeah, this change is something that I value. It is in alignment with my values. It is the right thing to do. I do want to go to B, even though I'm going to lose some things that I valued. I have a lot to gain. B is where I want to go. Then it is critical that I make a plan to help myself through the journey and I surround myself with others who will help me too. There's some tips. I can offer you some extra resources. I invite you to head out to our website, yourclearnextstep.com. We've got a ton of resources there on change management. There's a whole set of resources. If you go to yourclearnextstep.com, scroll down to the bottom, you'll see a section at the bottom with resources. One of those pages says resources and tools. You click on that, you'll get to a column on change and transition. You can hang out on there. Just click on that change and transition page. It'll take you to a whole page with additional change and transition resources, lots of tools and resources to help you get even better. My friends, I hope this is useful to you. If you have other ideas, if you have other tips, would you chime in? I'd love to hear your recommendations as well. I am hoping that this is helpful for you as you're making decisions about should you take that change, should you make that change or not? And then once you've made that change, how do you get through it? My commitment here, as always, my friends, is to help you have a better day. I hope this has been helpful. On behalf of all of us here at Your Clear Next Step, I hope the rest of your day is even better. Thanks so much for listening.
Thank you for tuning in today. The Even Better podcast will be back with more content soon. But in the meantime, subscribe to our podcast or check out our website at yourclearnextstep.com for more information. See you next episode.